Hello my fellow crafters and welcome back to Inspiration for Cards. Today I'm going to be making a card for you and I'm going to be working with Aall Create. Love that brand. Now the other day I showed some cards I made with Aall Create during my live, and that was this one. And I got a couple of questions of how I achieved this effect. To be honest, I didn't invent this. I did a workshop from Tracy Evans and she taught this technique. I got some questions, so I just thought I'd show you quickly how to achieve something similar. So I'm going to be using this beautiful stamp from Tracy Evans, actually. This one, we're going to start with that. And I've got my card base ready, etc. So without any further ado, let's dive in and make that card. Okay, so I've got my card base ready. It's all prepped and I'm going to stamp out this beautiful stamp, and I'm going to use Ink on 3 Atelier in white. This is you can emboss this ink. So I want my embossing to be really white. So you can use Versamark, of course you can, with white embossing powder, but I just think if I use white ink, the white embossing is a bit more white even. So that's why I'm putting this one on. This is a pigment ink, nice and juicy pad. So I'm gonna take that and put that on the card right where I want it, approximately here. And I'm gonna stamp that image on, and I'm gonna give the ink some time to adhere to the paper. Really press it on there. Now, you can't see that. It's white, but you can see it a little bit. So next I'm going to take my embossing powder. I'm using the Wow Bright White, and I'm going to put that all over the card. Tap it off. Making sure everything is covered. There we have it. And we're going to melt that using my Sizzix heat gun. Okay, that's nice and melted. So now we're ready for the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my water bottle and I'm just going to spray this on the back and quite heavily on the front. Now water is something that we're going to need quite a lot from. Next I'm going to take spun sugar, beautiful light pink in the oxide formula. Gonna spritz that with water. Got my watercolor brush here, and I'm just gonna pick that color up. And I'm just gonna dab that on there, just all over that card. And because I've got that water on there, it will wick out to the sides. Maybe spray it even some more. Pick up some more color. Make sure you dab that all over the card and build that color up. So I'm going to take some more of the spun sugar, taking a smaller brush, spritzing that a bit with water. I'm just going to intensify that color a bit inside the petals of that flower. I'm just letting that do its thing, letting it flow where it wants to flow, taking off a hair. There we go. Just putting some color on that flower. Just like that, making sure it all wicks out. And then in a perfect world, you would let this dry naturally. I'm not going to do that because that will make this video very long. So I'm just going to take my heat gun and help it along a bit. But be careful not to melt the embossing powder again. Next, I'm going to mop up this color. And of course, you can take a card and dip it in, and that way don't waste your ink, which would be the normal way to do it for me, but now because I'm filming, I'm not doing that. Right, next I'm coming in with Vintage Photo in the oxide formula. And I'm gonna spritz that with water. And spritz the card again with water. Yes, I've just tried it, but I do want to build up the layers. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna go around that embossing with the Vintage Photo. I'm just gonna let that wick out into that pink. And if it doesn't wick out enough, you just pick up some water again. Just go around that. Flower. Make sure you don't go inside the flower. You just leave that to be pink. What will happen is that the embossing powder, the melted embossing powder, will resist the colors that we put on there. And that will make the white of the flower pop a lot. Just go around and let that wick out a bit. Help it along, put some more water there. Just take your time, you're not in a rush. Just put it on there. Just taking off a bit here from the side. I don't want it to pull too much. But the rest, I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just letting it do its thing. Helping it along a bit. Spritzing it with some more water if it doesn't wick out enough. Just take your time doing this. You're not in a rush. Now, again, in a perfect world, you would let this dry naturally. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to help it along a bit. Okay, so now this is dry enough. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry, but what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some water and I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of this Vintage Photo. And I'm just going to go around here again. I just want that to have a bit more intensity of the color. Just going to go around, blending that in, picking up some color and blending again. And there's still moisture in the card, so what you will see is that it will still wick out. And if it's too harsh a line, just pick some water again and blend it out. But first, I want to increase that intensity all around that flower. I'm taking a little brush for this, a really tiny one, just because I want to make sure I can get into all the little nooks and crannies without going over the pink of the flower. And because I've dried the layers in between a bit now, you can actually build up the layers. It's not blending immediately. Just going around the stem a bit, both sides. Just making that flower pop a bit more. Now I'm going to spritz it again to let that wick out a bit into what we've already done. Help it along a bit. Just let it. Next I took some Kitsch Flamingo, which is a pink that is slightly darker than the spun sugar. And I'm going to, you can see the difference, you see, it's just a bit more intense. I'm going to take some water again, spray it, pick up some water and pick up some of the color. And I'm just going to intensify the flower. Starting on the inside. I'm just touching the base of the flower, base of the petal, I should say. Just letting it wick out again. So there's a lot of moisture on this card, and we really need to make sure it's dry when we finish it, but we still have some time. And then again, we need to let it dry. But before I'm going to dry it, I'm just going to go around the flower one more time, intensifying that vintage photo. You can see it already, it blends out because there's still a lot of moisture on that card. I just want to intensify that ever so slightly. You see what that does? It really makes that flower pop. Now, I've lost some of the pink along the edge, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of that pink, take a clean brush, and pick up some of that color, thin it out, and I'm just going to dab that around, blending it in with the vintage photo. Like that. There we go. That should be the trick. Let me show you where we are with it. You see how that flower pops now? And here we have the nice blend with the vintage photo, and it wicks out. I love that. So I'm just going to give that one more spritz, just to let the colors do its thing. I'm going to put that to the side because I want to give that some time to dry naturally. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp out a sentiment. And this is also a sentiment from Aall Create. I'm going to use this one, wishing you the happiest day. So I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to take an acrylic block, pick that up, and I'm going to use my white pigment ink. Make sure that's inked up well. Don't do what I just did and throw it into your pink. And I'm just going to stamp that right in the middle. Giving that some time to sink in. Perfect. Next, I'm going to take my white embossing powder. Now, I should have used my anti-static tool for this, so let's hope it's not going to be a complete mess. If it is, we'll start over. It's not too bad. Just going to take a tiny brush and clean it up a bit. And I'm going to melt that. And that is now beautifully embossed. I just love using white pigment ink because this is so intensely white now. The combination of white pigment ink with the white embossing powder, that does the trick for me. So next I'm going to take my little trimmer and trim this off like so. There we are. Sentiment ready. Next I'm going to take this tiny little dahlia that's here and I'm going to stamp that out on a scrap piece of paper. And I'm going to stamp that out using my Intensifying Glare in Nocturne. Like that. Beautiful. These stamps stamp so nice. So now, that is a bit fussy, but that's why they call it fussy cutting. I'm going to fussy cut this out. I'm not going to bother you with that. You will see it when I'm done. So that is all trimmed out. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some of this pink that I've got here, the spun sugar. I'm just going to give that a light wash of that oxide. Nothing too much. Just a light wash so that it matches the other one. So that's there. Now let me think. Is there anything else I need to do? No, I think I'm pretty well done. So I'm gonna dry this further now. It's got some time to really do its thing, and a lot of it is already dry, you see. And I love that intensity and the layering of the colors that you get, and the blending of the colors of the pink and the brownish color and the oxidation you get from spritzing it with water. I just love that. So I'm just gonna dry the rest. Okay, that is now nice and dry, and look at that. Now, what you could do, I'm not gonna, but you could even build up the colors in the flowers a tiny bit more. Let's do one little, why not? Where's my little brush gone? There we go. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some water, take my brush, I'm just very lightly gonna dab on that center and on that point, just to give it a bit more dimension. Even more dimension than it's already got, because I do like that. And I just love doing this. Who would have thought that? People that know me know that I'm very impatient, but this is so relaxing. I just love it. So what I'm going to do next is, if I've got a bit too harsh of a line, like we have here, I'm just going to lightly blend over that. Just going back and forth, softening up that line. And here we have it. Love it. It's got dimensions, got depth, it's got different layers. So I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to clean up this ink. Don't need that anymore. And it's time to assemble the card. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to attach this panel onto my black matte layer. I'm going to use glue because the panel is quite warped, and the glue will definitely help that adhere nice and flat. So I'm going to put that right on that mat, and look how that makes the colors pop. I just love that. Putting a black matte layer on there, yeah, it just really does it for me. Okay, now I'm just going to press that down, really give that a good press around the edges of the card to really make sure it's pressed down well. That's that. Next I'm going to take my sentiment and I'm going to put that right across my card. Like that. Actually, I changed my mind. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim off that bit. I'm going to put that right here. There we go. And then I've got this little dahlia that I'm going to put on here. Love that. So next I want to put on some splatters. I'm going to start with white. Got my white Posca pen here. It's not the pen, it's the brush actually, but it also does the trick. I'm just gonna splatter on there. Give it even a bit more. And I think the white splatter really complements the white embossing we've got on there. So that's that. And next I'm going to take my black Posca pen. I'm just gonna give it some black splatters. Not really much. Don't want too much. I just want some black splatters on there to balance it out. There we go. You see, it just gives it a bit more of that grungy look, which I like. Now, you wait until it's completely dry before you put it onto your base card. I will just do that now. So I'll just take my glue and put some glue behind that. Now, last but not least, I'm going to take some of these clear enamels. Very handy because they've got adhesive on the back. I'm just going to put that one right here on the sentiment. I'm going to put one right here. And I'm going to take a smaller one. Put that here on the petal. Just 3 tiny, almost like dewdrops on there. And this completes the finished card. Look at that. I just love how this came together. Yeah, it's a beautiful technique, and it turns out beautiful cards. These stems from Aall Create, designed by Tracy Evans, they are stunning. So yeah, I really love how this turned out. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing this technique. I gave it a bit of my own twist, but that's how it goes, right? So I really hope you liked this card, and it answers the questions I had during my live last week. So with that being said, this was the video for today. So thank you for watching. If you haven't done so yet, please consider to subscribe to my channel. That would really make my day. Give this video a thumbs up because that will help the YouTube algorithm to help other people find me as well. And leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching this one, and I would love to see you for the next one. Thank you. Bye.